Welcome to 3, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. We have had meeting number 57 in Roma. Novak Djokovic against Rafael Nadal in the final, somewhere that one of those two guys have been in every single year since 2005. And in the end, it was Rafael Nadal coming away with his 10th title. 7-5, 1-6, 6-3 over Novak. Joel, takeaways.
I just think it was just an incredible effort from both of them. You know, there was a book and a movie made years ago. It was called 7 Days in May, about an attempt to invade the U.S. government by the military. So call this 5 Days in May. And look what these guys did. Look at Nadal beating Sinner, Shapovalov, who he faced 2 match points, Zverev, Opelka, and now Novak. Novak beating Taylor Fritz, Davide Fokina, Tsitsipas and look at Novak, what he did yesterday, what he did on the Saturday, closing out his quarter after being down, winning a 3-set semi that went into the night. Then these two playing a terrific, compelling final. It just is amazing how great both Novak and Rafa are.
How many times is Rafa going to fool us into thinking that this might be the year that he loses or he falls apart on clay? You know, it's so funny. I had 3 different texts from people saying after the Shapovalov match that they thought for sure Nadal would just withdraw from the tournament because he looked tired. You know, I saw people tweeting that his forehand's off, but he's just playing himself into form. I mean, some people see Rafa and they're looking for the aging, right? They're looking for, oh, he's falling apart, he's tired, you know, whatever. But I look at him, maybe I'm glass half full. I look at him and I see, well, there he's just playing himself into form as he always does.
Well, and also, you know, it's interesting about this. I wrote this the other day. There's a lot of talk about the tally and the Grand Slams and all the titles these guys are going to win, all these numbers, all this. And then there's the rally, which is known as the point, the match, the thing in front of you. Remember once when late in Jimmy Connor's career, I was at a press conference, and as often happens at press conference, you kind of begin the question with a statement about some numeric achievement. And there's always something when an icon gets into the 30s where you say, you know, this is your 875th, whatever, your 32nd this. And Connor says, you know, that's all well and good, but I can't think about that. I've got to worry about the match I'm playing tomorrow. And in a way, I think it's important from a storytelling standpoint to remind ourselves of that. So instead of viewing these people from sort of the glass window 200 miles away about their data, like they're just going to exist as a series of statistical achievements, to dig into the fact that, okay, here's Rafa playing in Rome. Here's Novak playing in Rome. And it's just about playing tennis matches. They don't exist for our tally pleasure. So, and you're so right, Amy, you look at the way Rafa is, people, they've been watching the aging on him since about 2006. because of the injuries he's suffered and the physicality. And it's kind of fascinating to ponder these contenders. But look at these guys, 15 years in and still playing great tennis.
He's losing his hair, but he's not losing any tennis matches. That's kind of the net here. Joel, did you see the Nadal quote prior to the final? It was after the semifinal victory, because it's very close to what you're just describing, and it caught my eye. He said someone asked him about his Roland Garros preparation, and he said, it's playing Djokovic your ideal preparation for the French? And he goes, this isn't preparation, this is Rome.
Nice.
That really caught my eye. I mean, this is Rome. You know, we look at this as some kind of lead up, and I think in a way we are right to do so, because we know that the history books will remember the French in 2021 far more than it'll remember Rome in 2021. But from his standpoint and his mindset, I think that's just very illuminating. He's trying to win Rome. This isn't about the French.
Right. And so they don't exist. This is where it's important to kind of think that the the storyline narrative we sometimes wish to impose on the year is not, it's like I wrote this about Nadal. I said, we look at, history is looking backwards, but life is lived forwards. So we just have to be in that moment. And you just have to say, here I am, is what I'm doing. You're right. Nadal isn't vying to construct a media guide mosaic of the year. He's just trying to win today's tennis match and play who's in front of him. But again, to look at the totality of the week that both of these guys did, Novak had a so-so clay season, and look how tested he was in those two matches before the final, and look how well he played. What a clutch performer. Same with Nadal, facing match points early in the tournament. And you see these guys just roam for its own sake. Roam for its own sake is what Nadal is trying to talk about, instead of just, what we sow, towards Paris, towards preparation. It's like it's a primary in an election. He's gathering delegates.
Well, certainly for,
yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
Novak had a tremendous tournament, by the way, and that it mattered to him because in the final against Nadal, after losing the first set, he came out and freaking nailed the second set. So it's knowing that he would have to play a third set if he did that. So I think it's just a testament to how these great players, when they're in the moment, they don't want to lose. And it really doesn't matter if they're playing in somebody's backyard or if they're playing in the final of a slam. They want to win.
It's work habits. It reminds me again of another thing. Again, I learned a lot from Jimmy Connors, and I think the smartest too. He said, if you play every match like it's the big match, when the big match comes, you're ready. And this is, I may slip this in, that's a really good recreational piece of advice. That's why I think it's important for recreational players when they play their practice matches to simulate match play as much as possible. I mean, so we're not like chit-chatting and laughing and doing these things to kind of the same way a musician would do that on with a recital, to prepare for a recital. You wouldn't be like, laughing and singing while you were doing a piano recital. You would be bearing down on the piano. So, and these guys, it was really, really impressive week in Rome. And of course, we're going to say, oh yes, this seems to bode well for them in Paris, we think.
For sure. Well, I was so impressed with the fact that Novak didn't give up and use the excuse that was built in for him coming into this match. The fact that he bounced back and played a great second set, Nadal had a drop off in level for sure, and it resulted in a 6-1 in favor of Novak. But he very much could have thrown in the towel there. And I'm alluding to the scheduling, of course, and the fact that while yes, it was Novak's fault, and he said that, those are his words, it was his fault entirely that Sonego match turned out to be such a long one. But still, he had to play 2 matches in 2 days. Tsitsipas is just so formidable. And then go and play Sonego. It ended up being hours and hours of tennis, and then having to play the very next day for an afternoon start in Rome. He could have had every right in his mind. He had that built-in excuse to say, okay, I dropped a tough physical first set. I'm not going to be able to win this match, and go away quietly in the second set. And he didn't do that. And then he fought very hard up until losing that 2-all game in the third set.
There were Djokovic fans who said that, look, I almost don't really care if he makes the final or not. Like, I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want him to get run down. But for the fact that Novak had Rafa by 2 in the head-to-head, and now with this win, Rafa moves just within 1. I think it's 29-28, Gil. So, but for that fact, they were happy to just have, a lot of them were happy to just have Novak rest. But what makes him so great is, that's not his mentality. That's not how he thinks.
But this is the competitor mentality. This is what the pros, I mean, the very best generate the results that do it, but that's what being a pro tennis player is. And that's where I think, work habits and practice and competing. And if it's easy to bag a Rome final, you might as well then bag a French quarter or French semi. And so it's just about work habits and commitment. And also, I think it's interesting these days. Players have far more resources for understanding precisely how to recover. I mean, Novak's team probably knew exactly, okay, we got this other match. We got this time in between. Here's the electrolyte. Here's the drink. And here's after Sonego. Here's the ice bath. I was talking with someone who played in the 70s and 80s. I was talking with this person recently. And in their time, they didn't know. It was all trial and error. Okay, I just had the big win. Do I go for a run? Do I take a shower? Do I take a bath? Do I have a massage? They didn't know the sequence of all these things. And now look at how someone like Novak probably has this down to a science. Okay, the match ends. Here's the massage. Here's the light massage. Here's the stretch. Here's the bike. Here's the ride the bike. Here's the ice bath. Get the special protein, whatever. Everything is lined up for them so the recovery can be as efficient and productive as possible. And that's pretty neat too. And the upside for us is we get great tennis. I mean, look how much great tennis these guys gave us this week. How many engaging rallies. I mean, that Sonego match, that was just fantastic. And you see the crowd is back. So you remember, wow, we missed that. And of course, how great you see in a place like Rome, where the fans are cheering on this Italian.
It makes such a big difference to have a crowd. I guess the question that I think I need to ask, because, it's gonna unfortunately be a bigger part of how people talk about the match versus its actual effects. But do you think that Novak was fully recovered, or do you think that the scheduling did play a factor and he was fatigued? I know it's hard to speak in absolutes on these things, but this is going to be what is going to surround a lot of the fodder between, especially the fan bases, those who have a partial view of this rivalry. It's going to be, okay, did Novak lose? Did Novak have less of a chance because he played such a stuffed schedule? And Nadal was asked about this before the match, just to throw it out there, and he said it won't be the factor. It shouldn't be the factor. I've played a lot too, which he did just earlier on in the tournament.
Nadal was also roughed up. I mean, well, both players were playing on a court that had all sorts of divots and weird situations, and Rafa opened up a scab, tumbling over again that he had previously tumbled over. But my answer to that, Gil, is actually probably, fatigue against two of the Titans. Fatigue is going to be a factor. However, I have perceived something, and I want to go back and take a closer look at it, but I have perceived something in Novak's game on clay that I think he's going to have to address if he really, really wants to vie for Roland Garros and beating Rafa and solving the Rafa riddle on clay. And that is the forehand jam, the shot hit to his forehand closer, not out wide, but closer. That for Novak, he seems to either make errors there or walk into Rafa's trap, give a weak reply on that forehand jam that Rafa is then able to control the point.
Are you talking about the return or a regular rally?
Really rally, but it can be the return as well. But I'm really talking about rallies.
So you're opining that in a rally, the portal to Novak might be, it's like a baseball pitcher, to pitch him tight, because he can't, on the run, he can do something maybe and tilt the court in a way. So if you make him hit, if you hit to his forehand to the wide to his forehand, he'll do something pretty good. But if you go middle, it's not
B.
that.
Yeah, B.
He might miss, which is delightful in its own right. But more significantly, maybe he won't generate as much traction.
Think back to the Karatsev match that he lost in that final of the Serbia Open. Remember, Karatsev was just pounding him in the middle of the court. And that's where the errors were coming, and that's where the weak reply was coming for Karatsev to pounce on. But if Novak can solve this riddle, this puzzle and just shore that up, then I think he's turned over a major key.
But this is a really interesting thing about the contemporary forehand, and this reminds me, Gil, of a conversation I had with Amy with Gil's coach, Chris Lewitt. I was talking last week. That is what they call, to hit that well requires the practice. I guess even more if you're hitting it from C. What do they call the inside out, the invertido? How do they? That's what they call it in Spain. Like Nadal, in his case, he's moving to his right because he's a left-hander. But Novak, this gets to the technical dilemma, just like Andy Murray, even more so. Like, how do you generate significant yardage hitting a forehand from the middle of the court? Mm-hmm. And Nadal does that like no one in the history of the sport. He moves to his right, and he's generating tremendous everything with it. And your point, Amy, which is interesting, is that Novak, he might make errors because he's trying to go for too much, but his technique, which is kind of this fairly efficient, compact swing, isn't getting the racket head speed. So I think what we should look for as Roland Garros gets underway is how productive is Novak hitting his forehand from B and maybe even C.
Yeah.
Let's define that for viewers and listeners. A, B, C.
Yeah, so Novak's out wide forehand would be A. A forehand that he would hit from the center hash to midway between the sideline and the center hash, that chunk in the middle would be B, and then C, and then his out wide backhand would be D.
Yeah, so forehand winners in this match, 26 for Nadal, 11 for Djokovic. And what we saw, that's what we're going to see a lot of the time on this surface, because Nadal does have a better +1 game, is generating more easily from the middle of the court. I think that Novak is looking a little bit better than he has in the last couple of years, actually, with his sustained aggression. I think he's hitting his forehand a little bit spinnier to me. Remember in the RG final in 2020, when he tried to get aggressive, the forehand got really, really flat. And I think he's doing a better job right now of hitting that clay court forehand where you're spinning it, you're looping it, but you're trying to swing as violently and as fast as you possibly can. And I thought that he attacked Nadal's backhand pretty well in that pattern, but he didn't quite have the finish in him that Nadal had. So you saw Rafa win a lot of points from defensive positions.
But I think it's also a matter of not just hitting, not for Novak so much hitting winners as much as generating court positioning, putting the ball in places that pin Nadal and putting in places that don't make it easy for Nadal to do things. And again, this is the dilemma. This is what's so great about tennis, is nobody gets everything. Nobody has
the problem. I'm gonna say I thought Novak did that well in this match. I thought he did pin Nadal in the backhand corner. Right, it's just he needs to find that point. He needs to finish.
Well, but Rafa had the chess move, Gil, ahead of that, which was Rafa hit forehand down the line, kind of that, curvature kind of shot that is low percentage.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when Novak goes cross court into Nadal's backhand.
Oh, backhand.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but that one Rafa hits, I don't think that's low percentage at all for Nadal. Not for Nadal. I mean, it's less percentage than his cross court. But
we're back to the forehand, right?
Yeah, when Nadal whips his forehand down the line, that's just lesser. That's less percentage than his cross court. But Nadal, this is for Nadal, but it's still pretty high margin. This is the Novak conundrum against Nadal on clay, because Nadal is getting more time. I mean, we should buy ourselves a telestrator so we can.
Especially when a lefty's involved, because it's like,
right, because
it's so much easier to. That's why we do A, B, C, D, because when you start talking forehand, backhand, then lefty versus righty, it's confusing. But if you just talk about the zones of the court, it's the same for everybody.
But with Novak, again, this is the thing I was saying. The great thing about this sport, nobody gets everything. So some things that people make their game fairly complete, and these three have a certain completion themselves, and they don't have certain, you can't have all these kind of things. It's like you look at the way Federer has certain volley skills and closing skills. And we talked about this before. how each of these guys closes points or seeks to end points and the things they have. And so if the upside of Novak is this balance and this penetration, which makes him so good on hard court and grass, I mean, it explains why he does so well in Australia, because that flat ball is attaining traction. But on clay, a flat ball isn't all it's cracked up to be. I mean, you need certain types of arc and margin and sometimes something other than depth. I mean,
and speaking of that, Joel, this was one that I just thought of as I was watching the replay at the very end. So I wrote the story a couple years ago, right before the pandemic, actually, that Novak has developed this serve and a half for his second serve. So it's like, not in terms of speed, it's not a traditional slower second serve, but it's not a first serve type speed, but it's fast. It's a lot faster. And that has brought him titles. But I started thinking, is that hybrid serve that he's been using for second serve, is that mitigated on clay?
I think it totally is. I think he's abandoned it. I think now, so I think the serve you're talking about, he hits with slice to the righty forehand, right? A lot of the time, which is completely untraditional. But I think on clay, he's realizing it's completely ineffective, and he's trying to hit his kick serve, and it's very slow. He double faulted as well, probably too much for his liking, especially in the first set. He went 3 straight games with a double fault. And the 5-all game, it finally came back to ultimately hurt him in to the extent where Nadal broke and served for the first set.
So here's a question. Here's an interesting thing for consider with Novak. Okay, his play that works against Nadal is when Novak hits his backhand cross court to Nadal's forehand and then can open up the court. So, all right, why don't you run around some forehands? Because in a way, if you took just a neutral view and said, okay, which Novak shot is more penetrating, forceful, his cross court backhand or his inside out forehand?
Inside out forehand.
No, but Novak
I know.
shot.
Well,
he needs it to be his inside forehand, but in a way, he's had his best success against Nadal at times with his cross-court backhand. So you almost want to say, no, go ahead, run around forehand.
I think it was an inside-out forehand, though, that Novak hit that cost him the first set. I could be wrong about that.
But it's a shot that's less. He hits it pretty darn well. But the Nadal, and you said about the lefty aspect, Amy, inside out to Nadal, and then to his forehand, to his forehand. But Novak's cross-court backhand. It's interesting how all these.
Yeah.
You asked a trick question. I think you asked a trick question.
I did.
If Novak comes around and hits a forehand, it's better offensively, but he's out of position. Novak doesn't want that. Novak wants to cover the court, and he's got a tremendous backhand. So that's why I think he likes to stand there and just hit a backhand. But on clay, I think he's more apt to actually run around and hit the forehand.
No,
which
he's
is
definitely
good.
more apt. He's definitely more apt. But the question is, then has it become productive? Because you're right. It's like you talk about, Nadal is just a series of landmines because the things he does, the margins he has, and the whole lefty factor. I mean, as a left-hander myself, who's never hit a forehand, who could, you watch Nadal. A coach once did a thing for me. A coach did a very nice thing for me. He said, I'm going to show you how to hit the contemporary forehand other than your Eastern forehand. And he showed me some things. And after a while, I was getting some, a little bit of rotation. He says, okay, now imagine doing that, hitting it with 4 times as much rotation and doing it for 4 hours. And it'll give you an idea of what it's like to be Nadal.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just so remarkable. I mean, this is what's so great about great athletes, whether it's seeing someone like a Steph Curry or a Tom Brady. It's like, this is remarkable skills, or Novak too, like the things Novak does that are so remarkable, but then how it plays into what Nadal does, it's a tricky matchup.
I want to get to the head-to-head real quick and just a macro point on this. Since 2017, the beginning of 2017, Djokovic is unbeaten against Nadal on hard court. Nadal is unbeaten against Djokovic on clay court. They both had their slam blowouts in their respective favorite majors. This is becoming, I don't want to slander it. Okay. It's been good stuff, but this is becoming a rather predictable head to head. And it's arguably the greatest rivalry in the history of men's tennis. That's very arguable, but I said arguably. Why has this been so predictable? Like, how do we feel about the fact that this is getting very straightforward?
Well, it's like, so you're saying it's like a home and home series, right?
But there's no surprises. No one,
I think
they're
what
not
happened,
playing each other well on their against, who they keep holding serve on their favorite surfaces,
right,
so to
it's
speak.
a home and home. It's like I beat you, and the outliers occasionally when I beat you on the road. I think it's also, look, when you're good, as the better you get, the more you're aware of your skill deal, and you leverage your asset. And that's what your asset. And then so that's Novak has made himself so great, and you obviously refer particularly a place like Australia that fits into all his stuff, and Nadal. And then there's familiarity. So the surprise thing is off the table too. And this is a dilemma in tennis more than a team sport. In team sport, you make a trade, you bring in the enforcer, you shake things up more. But in a way, it's almost built to be that way because of who they each are and how great they are. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Amy?
That the great matchup or the great equalizer would be grass. And we know that they've played some humdingers on grass. So, that's why I brought up that thing about the forehand jam for Novak, because I definitely think that it's within each of their power to defeat the other one on the other's preferred surface. It's just a matter of the puzzle and making the adjustment. I have no doubt that Novak will try to do it for Roland Garros this year. He'll try to solve the puzzle. He came close today.
Yeah. Although
Good.
I'm still not feeling it. We'll discuss that soon. We don't need to do that now because we have a couple weeks until the French. It kind of supports my theory though, this pattern. And I know this is a little bit out there. It's something that we could never prove, but my feeling in the late career of Novak Djokovic, or the recent career, I'll say, is that he's getting worse on clay and better on fast, hard, and grass. That's just, I feel like that's the direction his game is going in. And that might exacerbate what we're seeing. In other words, I just don't think the 2011 to 2016 version of Djokovic on clay really exists anymore. And that's been my theory.
I have a theory.
But they can change. I mean, they can flip it. They can. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joel. Go ahead.
Which is that it's not just so that Novak's getting worse on clay. The competition is always improving. So there are more things that if you took the sample base of 2011 to 2016, who he was vying with and he was winning titles, they're not as good thanks to him. That's what's interesting. These three have created challengers. So there are more people who can make life hard. There wasn't a Karatsev in 2013. There wasn't someone who played that. There wasn't a Berrettini. There wasn't that level of skill and power. So Novak, the people you come up with of your peer group, those are your guys. And then along come these others who are younger and faster and stronger and fighting age. And Novak had skill-wise far more distance between himself and the others at Australia. It's a little bit like we would talk about Federer and grass. Is Roger worse on grass because he's only won Wimbledon twice this decade, 2 or 3 times this decade compared to the other times he won it? And it's just the quality of the competition gets better too. So that makes it harder as well.
And of course, I see it through an analytics lens. It's just really been the last 4 to 5 years that so many players are using the analytics more than they did back then. So, the patterns and both Novak and Rafa use them. So it just becomes more defined where to find the errors and how to construct the points. But that's also why I think that the puzzle is solvable. So we'll see.
All right. I would say if we go back and watch some of the old Novak against Rafa matches in Rome, and we go in the archives, and we have a bunch to choose from. I think we're going to see a much more physical brand of tennis that Novak had a better shot at winning.
He definitely did.
Compared to
He
now.
did. He did.
Yeah.
He did. But and then you have to look at how Nadal enhances himself and the things he does. And I think Nadal's shot, if Novak's shot of upside is the inside out forehand, Nadal's has been the down the line forehand. I mean, that's the shot that when Novak started to beat Rafa, that was a shot that Rafa knew he needed to make better way back 10 years ago.
And he did it well in the third set. Let's talk about Federer after the break. Roger Federer returns this week in Geneva. He'll play the winner of Jordan Thompson and Pablo Andujar, who's hyphenated in flash score tennis. I've never seen it. Apparently he's Andujar Alba, which I've never seen in my life. I guess it's like Nadal Pereira. Anyway, Roger Federer, I mean, look, I would say if he plays Roland Garros, then Geneva was a success. It's my take on it.
What if he doesn't play Roland Garros? Is Geneva, then what?
Then Geneva,
I mean, Gilly's
didn't work.
He's already said he's going to play. Are you saying that he may not?
Well, yeah, because last time he played Doha, and that wasn't supposed to be the only tournament that he was going to play over the hard court swing, but that turned into, okay, I'm not actually ready yet. So that's why my outlook on this is if he plays the French, then Geneva was a success. And it has nothing to do with wins and losses.
All right, I see. Well, look, Geneva, this whole clay thing for him, for Federer, I think is 5 matches. Get in 5 matches, see what happens in Geneva, on to Roland Garros, stay healthy. I also have this picture of Roger tuning in to some degree to all this action in Rome we just saw, of seeing his 2 main rivals just knock themselves out over a whole week. And I could just get this picture of Roger in his kitchen, helping himself to some chocolate or something and saying, wow, yeah, I played that tournament. Is that 15 years ago? Rafa and I played a 5th set tiebreaker final. Who was that? America? That was me. I mean, it's like, that seems to him, must seem like ancient Roman history, just a long, long time ago. And now I think he's thinking, remember, he's 5-6 years older than those guys, and he just wants to keep himself healthy for Wimbledon. That's what it's all about.
Well, when was the last time that Roger played on clay? What was his last match?
He lost to Nadal in the semifinal.
Yes. Right. I mean, he played Roland Garros in 2019, and he made it all the way to the semifinals, and he lost to Rafa. No shame in that. The guy's still good. He's still a good player.
Yeah, he's still.
So I have some expectations.
But not about Geneva, right? But you're saying Joel's 5 is a low ball. His 5 matches is a low ball.
Yeah, well, I'm saying I shouldn't predict, because we don't know what we're going to see from Roger. He's taken a lot of time off, but the guy can play on clay. I mean, it's not as if, he's never won Roland Garros or he doesn't know what he's doing. He's European, so I have some expectations for Roger. I think he could very well win Geneva. But again, I don't know, because we just haven't seen him in terms of a fitness level.
Right. But also, I just, to me, I use 5 as just kind of like, if he plays 5, he'll feel, okay, I put in some nice yards on clay. I got in some match play. I'm pretty healthy. On to Halle, on to grass. Let's go Wimbledon and see how it goes. And that's fine. So we'll see how the weather gods are. I mean, again, the thing we saw in Rome that was so vivid, different weather, different days, and clay and hard. I mean, you see how in the women's match, how Barty retired in the second set of her match, and clearly that was influenced by weather and conditions. So we'll see how Federer feels, because that you just want to be feeling it pretty good on clay. And if there's a slightest warning sign, I mean, and then you saw how Rafa, when he tripped over that nail, I mean, I'd never seen him more vociferous in the wake of something. He was upset about that. And that was his whole his body. And in that sense, you would ask him about preparing for Roland Garros. In that sense, he wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm just playing Rome." He knew, that could take down his whole year, that kind of injury.
A very good barometer. I was really happy to see Casper Ruud in the lineup for Geneva because Roger beat Casper in 2019 at Roland Garros. He demolished him. Well, some time has gone by and Ruud's game has really become kind of a Rafa light type game, and he does really well on clay. We've seen it this season. So if they meet again on clay, Roger and Casper Ruud will be able to have more of an apples to apples comparison.
To get a good barometer. That would be interesting to see. It isn't a Casper awakening. Yeah.
Ruud is super good, and he likes to save his body. He didn't play Rome. I thought that was interesting for and if you look at his schedule, he doesn't pack it, which I find fascinating. Most players at his level like to do that.
Well, you know what I'm noticing now? It's funny. About 15, 20 years ago, when I saw Sand and Stolly win the US Open doubles, it was the first time the son of a world-class player had ever won a Grand Slam. And until then, you didn't see too many children of former pros in the pros. Partially it was because their dads and moms hadn't played in here with money. But now we're seeing more players whose parents had world-class backgrounds, like Tsitsipas, and now I'm going to get criticized to pronounce his name. What?
Sebastian Korda.
Sebastian Korda and Ruud. So there's a little more cognition going on there, probably about how you manage things, scheduling and training and lots of things. There might be some interesting knowledge going on that's different than if a player just went out on their own and entered every tournament possible. So the dad might say, "Hey, you're still young, manage your schedule. You don't have to play every week. Pay attention to the body." Again, there's so much more awareness now of what it takes to have a lengthy career.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, guys, this was just texted to me while we were sitting here talking. Today, Novak, and I'm guessing he said it after the match, he says, the next gen is Rafa, me, and maybe Roger. So I think that says, like, a lot of people have said, why are you guys doing this show now on the three? Like, they're at the end of their careers. Well, according to Novak, they're the next gen. So
whether they're at where they're at in their careers doesn't diminish their interest. I mean, I still hear shows about the Beatles. The Beatles, they broke up 50 years ago. So that means people are going to have to listen to us talk about those three for another 50 years.
Yeah, unfortunate.
A retro show on looking back on the three's greatest hits. So Novak said that about, that's a good quote. And Novak's going to
maybe Roger.
Maybe Roger. He's got a he's got a birthday next week, Novak too. So he'll be 34. So next gen, whatever.
Djokovic and Nadal had a joke in the locker room after their semifinals. They kind of looked at each other and said, "Well, it's the old guys again. How about that?" So we get another meeting between them, and we'll see if they can continue at Roland Garros, because it was not easy, and it was so impressive how they ran through their respective draws. Quite a spectacle, and just a reminder of how special these guys are. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. Leave a rating and a review on Apple. That's a big deal for us. We really appreciate that. And if you're watching on YouTube, comment, like, subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.